Hello and welcome, it's Pamela here. I hope you're having a great weekend. Today I'm sharing a really quick and easy art journal page in my Small Artesa watercolour book. I didn't have a lot of time on my hands when I was creating this spread, so I wanted something that I could do really quickly and that didn't take too long looking for too many supplies. Plus, I was looking for an excuse to use this really pretty rice paper from Imagination Crafts. If you've seen any of my previous rice paper art journal tutorials, you'll know that I normally put a base layer of white gesso down on the page so that I've got a really kind of bright background. But this time I've decided just to lay my rice papers straight onto the page and adhere them with transparent gesso. Sorry, I was getting a bit tongue-tied there, but I just wanted to skip that step to save time and also to see how the colour of the pages does come through on the rice paper if I do decide, for the sake of saving time, to skip that step in the future again. And even though I decided that I didn't want this spread to take too long, I also wanted to try a few new things and just have fun with it, really. And to be totally honest, there were a few times during creating this page that I did think like, oh, what have I done? I've totally ruined it. But I managed to, I guess, bring it back, and I really like the way it turned out in the end. So hopefully you'll stick around until the end and see what I come up with. I always love hearing your opinions, so please leave me a comment, let me know what you think of it. And while I'm at it, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it or learned any new techniques. The engagement really helps my channel to grow and to reach more people. Thank you in advance. So back to the actual spread that I'm trying to create here. So you'll see that I positioned the rice paper where I wanted the heart to lay on the page, which is more in the middle of the 2-page spread. I then cut off the excess and brought that over to the left hand side. I had forgot that I wanted the rice paper to lay underneath the lace design on the right hand side, so I'd already adhered that to my page. I did try lifting it up at first, but I thought it wasn't going to lift, so I placed the left hand side on top of it. But I really wasn't happy with the way it was looking. I really wanted the lace design to lay on top, so I tried again and managed to gently peel it back up and place my wood grain part of the pattern exactly where I wanted it. I've then let that completely dry and come back in with another design. The second rice paper that I'm using is by Ciao Bella and it's called Endless Love. I always really love mixing and matching rice papers in a spread, and I think the roses really complement the heart design. So as you saw, I just ripped the parts of the image that I want from the rice paper. And I always suggest that you tear your rice papers by hand rather than cut them with scissors, so that you don't get hard edges and they blend into your page better. So I leave them to dry completely and then I'll trim off the excess, and I have a rough idea of what my page is going to look like. And I think it's looking really pretty. It could actually be left like this, but I want to add my own mark, add some colours and play around and see what I can come up with. I really like the texture of the wood grain, but I want to knock the colour back a little bit. So I'm giving it a whitewash of undiluted gesso that I just lightly rub in with my finger so that it still remains translucent. This will always knock back any colours that you've got on your page, but it also helps to blend in the edges of the rice paper really nicely too. So I must admit, I really like the way it looks with the white background, or faded background anyway. I think it really makes the flowers pop, but it does look unfinished, and I decide that I do need to add some colour. I'm going in with my distress paints. These can give me a good coverage quite quickly, but they also remain translucent if I apply them lightly enough. That's why I'm just blending them in with my finger here. And I've gone for one of the lighter colours, which is dried marigold, but once I place it all over my page, I decide it does just look a bit too bland. So I take the slightly darker colour brush corduroy and I'm just lightly blending that into. I'm really a lot happier with how this colour looks. It makes the heart pop, and that's what I want to be the focal point of this spread. And as you'll see coming up, I do add a few dabs of Victorian velvet as well. These will just give a slight hint of pink to the background, particularly around the flowers. Here you can see that I'm just concentrating some more of the brush corduroy around the edges of the page. This will create a frame that draws the eye inwards. And with that, I'm quite happy with the colour that I've now achieved on the background. You can still see the distress coming through from the rice paper, which I really like, but I've got the heart to stand out more in my opinion. And I think it now looks more like something I've created and added my own personality to, rather than just having rice paper adhered to my journal. At this point, I just want to add a bit more texture and interest to my page. And I'm using these small stamps from Finnabair with Archiver link. The first one I'm using is Pink Peony, which is really quite subtle on this background. So the stamp has a rose design on it, which isn't showing too well on this background, but I really like the flashes of pink that it's leaving, which I think add to the background rather than overwhelm it. But I do want to break up the space of the background some more and add some of this script design. So I'm going in with this small stamp, again from Finnabair, and the sepia coloured Archiver link. And I'm just adding it randomly, but I have to admit I'm quite guilty of going overboard with my stamping, so it ends up being here, there and everywhere, but I think on this spread it really works. Another really effective way of not only tying everything together but also of adding movement and energy to your spread is by adding some splatters. And you saw I done that here first with the Victorian Velvet Distress Paint, which I watered down slightly, and then a small amount of gesso, which had also been watered down. This will just help it to flow a lot easier. And I more often than not like to do my splatters just by mixing on a small acrylic block, one of the stamping blocks, and flicking it off with a small paintbrush. I think this just gives me a lot more control of where I want it. I'll also turn the journal around so I can aim it in the right places. Now, I did say this spread was all about just playing around, and one thing I was wondering while I was doing it is if I could get away with not adding any shadow to my rice papers and the images on the page. So although normally this would have been done before I splattered, I decided it definitely needed something to make them stand out a bit. So I've just gone in with one of my Inktense pencils in the colour Bark and really slightly added an outline to all of the flowers and the heart, and then now I'm just blending that out with a water brush. And I love these pencils because you can start off really lightly and then add more pigment until you get the result that you want to achieve, and that was what you saw me doing there. Each time the paintbrush left the screen, I was picking up a small amount of pigment from the nib of the pencil, which unfortunately wasn't in shot, but you'll see later when I'm shading around the sentiment how I can pick up some pigment and then just go back in and reapply until I get the strength of colour that I'm looking for in my shading. Once I was happy with how that looked, you saw that I went around with a blending tool and the sepia archival ink just to create more of a frame. And I'm really happy with how the page looks now. I think it's definitely a transformation from how the rice paper originally looked, and I've made it my own. I really like the way it's kind of got a vintage feel to it. And I think the heart has definitely become the focal point of the page rather than competing with the flowers, which was the effect I was trying to achieve. So now I'm just finishing off my page with some ideology quotation stickers from Tim Holtz. And I chose the quote, "Do small things with great love," which I think is perfect, especially in this journal, with it being the smaller one that I use. Although you will see if you stick around to the very end, although I was really happy and enjoy that quote, I don't know why I decided to use the black stickers. As soon as I stopped recording and started tidying up, I was just thinking they just don't look right. So I managed to peel them back up and I stuck the white ones down with the same quote instead. Luckily, I'd used a glue stick to adhere them, so that gave me a bit of movement time. Once I changed to the white stickers, I was really happy with how the spread looks. I think it looks really pretty, and I hope it inspires you to do something similar. If it does and you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Until next time, take care.